Okay. Hi, friends. It's Jessica here, and I am so excited to I call her one of my fiber besties. Her name is Mindy, and she is from Henlia Handmade. And she and I have been yarny friends for years now. Um, Probably at least 4 years. I don't know
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
how it's been, but we were kind of, in the beginning stages of our businesses together. And let me pin this to the top in our group and we should be good. Okay. So we kind of started our businesses in a similar time and we learned a lot of the same things from a business coach together who taught it was called the Handmade Titan University. I think before that it was called Rich Mom University way back in the day. And so we learned a lot of things together. We have I would say a similar outlook on, how we love on our communities and how we love on our VIPs. Um, and so I'm so excited to have her here with me. And I'll let her introduce herself a little bit, if you'd like, Mindy.
yeah. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for inviting me here. It's fun to be here. Yeah, so I'm Mindy, and my business is called Henlia Handmade, and I naturally dye U.S. wool yarn for primarily with the goal of being as eco-conscious as possible. So that's kind of the basis of everything that I do at Henlia Handmade.
And tell me a little bit about the name. I think it's named after some special people in your life, if I'm
Yeah,
right.
yeah, you remember that. Yeah, so it's a mashup of my two kids' names. So I have an Amelia and a Henry, and I squished them together and came up with Henlia. So and then added the handmade because I love alliteration so much. And it just kind of flowed. So that was the how my business name came to be.
That's awesome. And where are you located?
I am in Central Oregon. Bend is the nearest large town, and it's a big tourist town in Central Oregon. So it's where Mount Bachelor is. If you're a skier, you might know Mount Bachelor.
So that now makes sense to me. I'm clicking in my head because the yarn, your fingering weight yarn is it Bachelor?
It is, yeah, yeah. That's my bachelor base. Yep. Yeah,
Because
my all my
Bachelor Party didn't quite fit with the brand, but named after a mountain definitely fits more.
yeah. I can see how that would not make sense out of
Yeah,
context, but yeah, the my yarn bases are all named after local mountains. So
that's
that's where that
awesome.
how that fits
We
in.
have a we have a few friends popping in, saying hi. So we have Debbie is joining us from Central Pennsylvania,
Hi, Debbie.
and Sally is joining us
Hi,
from
Sally.
Arizona, and Chris is here from Kentucky.
Chris.
Um, And MJ, Mary Jane, I forget where you are. I know you grew up in Alaska. I think you're in Texas now. I think that's Texas. I try to keep everyone straight. And Sylvia's here from Florida too. So I have, you guys know I put together some questions and stuff for our guests to spark conversations. So I always love to ask people, how did you learn to knit? Who taught you? What is your yarny origin story? How did you get started?
Yeah. So it actually goes back so far that I can't remember. I remember as a young child, I was probably, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8. And I remember one summer my mom enrolling my older sister and myself in a learn to knit class. And I don't remember if that was like the very beginning for me or if she had given us some of the basics first. My grandma also played a role, as well as my aunt. So I think maybe the three of them plus the knitting lessons is how I started. But it was at a pretty young age.
Um, yeah, I love hearing about people who started so young and have kind of kept at it, even if there's been, pauses over the years. And I've been teaching my niece to knit, and she is about to turn 6. And so she is my youngest by far knitting student, but she just loves it so much. And I love seeing that spark and that excitement in, we're only doing garter stitch. We haven't done very much, but, you know, slow and steady, right? I don't
Mm.
want to scare her off and, make it too complicated. And so how did you go down that rabbit hole and go from knitting your own things to dyeing yarn?
Well, I, you mentioned taking pauses in the knitting in your knitting journey, and I definitely did. But while I was still young, um, my mom was very instrumental in all of the hand work that I do. And, she taught us how to, I say us because I have three sisters. So we all learned to knit, we all learned to crochet, we all learned to cross stitch and sew. And I feel really blessed in that because I know that isn't everyone's experience. But one of the things that was, um, that kind of, let's see, I can't remember how I'm trying to link all this together, but uh, there was always some sort of handcrafting, I guess, that was always going on in the sidelines for me, and in those early school years. But there was also the school work, and one of the big projects that we had at my school, there was a lot of importance put on this project, was our big annual science fair project. And we were expected to put our hearts and souls into these science fair projects each year and compete locally. And as you got older, maybe even potentially go out of the area to like the state science fairs or whatever. Anyway, it was a source of drama in my family. um, uh, God bless her, my mom is very much a perfectionist, and so she expected us to do our very, very best work as well. Anyway, the topic of this science fair project was always a struggle to come up with because it had to be something. It had to be the right thing. And one year, I'm pretty sure it was in sixth grade. I think it was my sixth grade project. My mom suggested, I was struggling to come up with my idea for my project. And my mom suggested, well, why don't you take some vegetables and try dyeing some yarn? And that was my very first experience doing any kind of dyeing at all. And of course, I'm sure we didn't do it anywhere close to, the correct way. But it was a kid's science experiment. But that like it kind of laid the groundwork, I think, because I didn't go back to it for a really long time, but it was by far the most fun I ever had doing any of those science fair projects. And it's the one that I look back on and remember the most. And I think that planted the seed for me. But it wasn't until I had my daughter in 2015 and I was watching a lot of I was watching a lot of knitting vloggers while I was nursing her, and that seemed like they were all dyeing yarn, and I thought I could do that too. And then I remembered, oh, I have done that before. And so then I just kind of picked up, I just, started to do my research and just kind of started when I had time. I had a newborn. It took a while to get from that point to, I had another baby in there. And then when my son was born, I remember saying, you know what, I'm going to stop thinking about this and I'm going to actually, try doing this again. So, yeah, so that was in 2017, I think, when I finally tried my first yarn dyeing experiment again. I think I had him wrapped up in one of the baby carriers, wrapped to my stomach, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna do this during nap time. I'm gonna just try this. So I just kind of spiraled from there because it was so much fun.
I love that story. Yeah, science projects were always something I left to the very, very last minute, always. Um, And so we did things like, my parents had a balloon business when I was growing up. Like they did balloon decorating and
Oh, cool.
party decorating and stationery. And later I owned, before I was doing all the yarn things, we had a family party business. But one of the things I remember doing, like we couldn't come up with something to do for the science project that year. And so we blew up the different shapes of balloons to see which like lasts the longest. Like, is it the circle or the star or the heart?
Oh,
And then
fun.
another year, I remember we did a project that we had just gotten a microwave. It was our first microwave, and my parents wanted to know what shape container was fastest for boiling water. Well, people didn't really have microwaves, like, we didn't really know too much about it, so they put a thermometer with mercury, like a glass thermometer with mercury in the microwave,
Oh,
so we
no.
could watch it and see when it got to boiling, and so there were sparks, and we unplugged it and, all of those things. But I have such memories of, like, doing those projects, and I love that yours actually sparked something that you've carried through in your life.
Yeah. Oh, my science teacher would be so proud to hear this
Yeah.
now. Oh.
And so I love how environmentally conscious you are. I know that you make that such a big part of your business. And I don't know if you still do, but I remember that you used to donate to plant trees as part of what you do. Is that something that you still do? And where do you donate to?
Yeah, I do. I do. I do try to give back with every purchase. Every skein of yarn that I sell, I donate $1 to the organization called One Tree Planted that you were mentioning,
That's
and
yeah.
that $1 plants a tree. So it's kind of cool. Like every skein of yarn that's sold gets, plants a tree. And then
That's
I also donate an additional $1 to a local animal farm rescue organization here in Central Oregon. So they've done a lot to help with like wildfire animal, like the farms that have been affected by wildfires near and kind of quite a ways further as well. And they've taken in all sorts of animals from things like that, and then also just normal rescue situations too. So I like
awesome.
to donate and to help their cause as well.
That's
That's
awesome.
called Harmony Farm Sanctuary.
Yeah. Oh, we have more comments in the chat. Kathy is also joining us from Florida. And Mary Jane says, I was right, Texas. And Chantal is joining us from Ontario. And I know they've had so many wildfires this season.
Yeah.
And joining in from Virginia. And Mary Jane says, love the tree for yarn idea. Yeah. And so speaking of being, I think this is the reason for being, or part of being, environmentally conscious and caring about the animals and all of those things. You only work with non-superwash yarn, right?
I do.
Well,
I
yeah.
do. Um, and that has been a very intentional choice as well. Um, I know it's probably a more unpopular opinion within the knitting community because I certainly have used superwash yarn, and I certainly value the easy care, especially as a mom. But what it comes down to for me is just that the more natural our products are that we use, the better they are for us and the environment. And the superwash treatment, it's not they're not great. They're not great. I mean, there are newer versions or newer techniques for superwashing yarn, but which are perhaps less harmful. But basically, you're like coating the fibers with plastic or a form of plastic, and so that just it doesn't biodegrade as easily as pure wool would. So that's kind of been my biggest motivating factor. And as I have spent the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, primarily knitting with non-superwash wool, I now realize, um, I don't know, I guess I could say that I've really acquired a taste for it, and that the texture of it, like it just it has more spring to it. It has more body to it, and just more character. So I don't know. I just really love it now. And it's hard for me. I look up and I see I have a stash of yarn that I've purchased over the years that I haven't been willing to give up yet. But a lot of it is superwash yarn, and I'm just like, I love it, and now I have a hard time using it. Now I have a hard time using it because I'm so used to the different feel, and maybe it's a little like the more grippiness maybe of non-superwash wool. It's still soft, but it's not slick. I don't know if
And you
that.
use, is it Cormo, or do you use from different breeds too?
So right now my fingering sock weight base is 100% Cormo, and it's from sheep in Wyoming. And the and actually, and okay, hold on, I'll get back to that. My worsted weight is Rambouillet sheep. I think I'm saying that right. My Rambouillet, um, and that is 100%. That's 100% Rambouillet as well. And so they're, it just kind of depends on the Cormo is really springy, and the Rambouillet is not as springy, but it's still really soft. Um, and anyway, what I wanted to say was the cool thing about the yarn sourcing that I've done is that these sheep come from multi-generational ranchers.
Mm.
So some of these are like third, fourth generation ranchers in Wyoming who, they've just passed along the trade in their families, and these sheep really are their family, and it's just really cool to be able to be a very, very small part of that.
Yeah, that's so special.
And is.
Um, Mary Jane asked a question. She said, "What is proper care for non-superwash wool?"
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I always recommend that you hand wash any non-superwash wool yarn, whether it's an accessory or a garment, whatever. I do always recommend that you hand wash it. um, the more gentle that you can be with it, the better. That said, when I'm in the dyeing process, I think it surprises people sometimes how roughly I handle the yarn, and it's been fine. I have never had any problems, except like when I was really at the very beginning stages of learning how to dye yarn. I haven't had any problems with it felting whatsoever. So, but that said, I wouldn't throw it in the washing machine.
Right.
And I've heard that people have done that, like put it in the gentle, like on cool. I wouldn't risk that myself, but yeah, hand wash. A little soak with some wool wash in a bowl or in your sink, and then just gently squeeze it out and lay it out to dry like you would when you're blocking a garment or an accessory. So that was a good question.
Yeah, awesome. We love learning. And what else was I going to ask you? So where do you find the inspiration for your colors?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes inspiration just strikes, but more often than not, um, it will, um, it'll be inspired by um, my surroundings. So the I'm very fortunate to live in a place where we have a lot of outdoor space, And so, the hiking and the lakes and the rivers, all of that does really inspire me. Um, and then sometimes I might just be, scrolling Pinterest or even Instagram or something, and I'll see a picture that catches my eye, and that might be the source for a colorway. So, or sometimes I just come up with, I'll just think, man, it'd be really fun you know, to design a collection that is based on, such and such theme, and I'll just kind of go off from that. Dyeing with natural dyes is different than the acid dyes that you see, because um, the way the dyes take to the yarn is a different process. So where you might see, uh, if you scroll Instagram at all, you might have seen dyers, throwing on the the different colors and then sprinkling the speckles on and everything, and then they flip over the yarn and they do it on the other side. You can't really do that with natural dyes, because the dye doesn't strike, which is just a fancy word of saying like stick to the yarn, in that same way. It needs more time to like absorb into the actual fibers. And
Uh-huh.
so the sometimes when I see a picture that inspires me, I might I might give it 5 or 6 goes and then be like, I'm just not doing that how I wanted, what I was envisioning in my head. Um, because sometimes I think I try to use natural dyes like they are acid dyes because I'm like, oh, it's so pretty. Um, but but it's just fun. It's just fun to even be able to see, a picture that inspires me. And even if it doesn't end up looking like the picture, sometimes you'll see the yarn and the inspiration picture together, and it's like, wow, that looks really similar. Um, I feel like it's still inspiring, even if it doesn't look like the picture, and I don't have to show anybody that picture anyway, because it was a jumping off point for the inspiration to start. So.
Awesome. So we had a question. Someone had sent me, one of our members. Her name is Sonia. So she had asked, she would love the creative license to start dyeing, kind of as a hobby for herself. And she was wondering if dyeing the yarn is an expensive venture to get into. Does it counter the cost of just going out and buying it? Are you actually investing more in your projects when you're dyeing it yourself? Or, if you're buying the undyed yarn and dyeing it yourself, is there a point where it is not financially worth it to do?
Oh, that's a really good question. That's a good question. I guess I would have to pose a few questions back, um, because you really need your own set of pots to be able to dye. You don't want to be using the same pots that you cook your food in and also use them to dye yarn in as well. And that's true even with natural dyes. Natural dyes, you wouldn't eat them, of course, but it wouldn't
Right.
be harmful to eat them. But even still, it's good to have that that separation.
Right.
So I guess all you really need to get started would be um, a separate pot that you would use exclusively for your dyeing, and like some sort of, maybe like a spoon or some sort of big utensil to be able to, or tongs to pull your yarn out. And those would be like the two big, just which, you can go down to um, like Home Goods or something, and, pick those up fairly inexpensively,
Right.
because you can just do it on your stovetop at home. Where it starts getting a little more expensive is when you're trying to find the blank dye or the blank yarn to dye. Um,
Mm.
Depending on what type of yarn you're looking for, that could you're not going to be saving a whole lot of money um, by there are places like Knit Picks where you can buy um, packs of undyed yarn for fairly inexpensive. Um,
Because the
less
other places you're buying, like, large quantities
right,
of the
right.
same yarn, so you're buying, like, 5 or 10 or even more skeins of the same weight, the same yarn,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, yeah. One of the pretty frequently used yarn suppliers is called Wool to Die For, and I don't think you have to I think anybody can purchase from them. I don't think you have to, like, show proof of a business license or anything.
Okay.
But it's called Wool to Die For, and it's wool, like WOOL, to the number
The
2.
number 2, right? And
Yeah,
then
and then dye, DYE, and then 4, the number 4. Um,
that's a great resource.
yeah, so you could look at them, and I think you do have to buy in packs of, like, 8 or something, but if you're, looking to dye a sweater quantity,
Right.
that's you could totally totally, you'd use that resource there. And then, of course, the dyes, depending on if you want to get into natural dyes or acid dyes, that's where some expense, your probably your next biggest expense could be. You could pick up a couple, or maybe like say 3 different little containers of acid dyes for fairly inexpensive, and those could last you for years and years if you're just doing it as a hobby.
Yeah.
And natural dyes are more expensive, but but you can also experiment with things that you might grow in your garden, like marigolds, or you can also buy or excuse me, grow. Oh shoot, what are they called? Um, they're like purple sunflowers. Like they have purple
Oh,
seeds, and you can. I try to grow those every year, and I never get enough seeds to like actually do have a
quantities.
like enough of a, but yeah, so there's various things that you could grow and try growing in your garden that you could use. And that's pretty fun to do because you could also use things like onion skins and avocado peels, which I haven't had good luck with, but some people do.
Yeah. Mary Jane says echinacea? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, echinacea. I haven't tried dyeing with echinacea, but there are a lot of flowers out there that you can use that would dye, especially yellows, like anything in the yellow, um, orangish yellow, gold kind of um, range. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. But anyway, to go back to the expense. I think you just have to view it like any other hobby. If it's something that you're interested in learning how to do, then there is going to be some expense. If you're doing it just to save money because you don't, you're seeing all these beautiful yarns out there for, 30, $34, whatever. And then you're like, oh, I don't want to spend that kind of money on that. I think you're going to find yourself probably kind of breaking even. Um, but you're learning something cool in the process. So if it's
We
something
all
that you're
we all
interested
love
in, I
that
totally
rabbit hole, right? We all start with little things and keep
yeah,
keep
yeah,
on.
yeah.
And Sonia's actually here. I think she wasn't able to make Friday, but she's here today. So she asked, so the natural dyeing wears out a bit with washing, right? Does
So,
it fade?
um, if it is, um, there are ranges of wash fastness and light fastness with natural dyes. So, um, there is well, I could provide more resources for this later, but there are some really good books out there that have done really good scientific studies on which dyes are the ones that really truly do last and don't wash out and don't fade out. So dyes like madder root, and that one is kind of produces like a orange to a red color. That is a dye that goes back to like hundreds of years, maybe more. thinking of like the um, rugs that you might see in a museum that were dyed, prior to the beginning of man-made dyes. That red color that you see and the oranges, that was almost almost certainly madder root. So, if you're looking for something that lasts, hundreds of years,
That's a
there
big
are dyes that will actually do that. But
yeah.
most,
Awesome.
there are a lot of things that you can get color out of when you're natural dyeing. Not all of them are going to stay. For example, I mentioned avocado. Avocado you can dye a really beautiful, like pinky, peachy color with avocado, but it's called a fugitive dye, and it just doesn't stay around forever. It'll turn more it'll fade into like a brown color. That's true with some of the yellow dyes as well. But I personally, when I'm dyeing yarn for my business, I do try to stick as closely to the proven long-lasting dyes, um, because I don't want to disappoint anybody.
Right, of course.
Like, "Oh, here's this beautiful skein," and then a month later, it looks brown.
Right.
Um, I won't wanna do that. So, you're definitely right that some dyes do fade out, and all dyes, even acid dyes, are gonna fade eventually. I mean, you think about clothes that you buy, even at the store, or they don't always, a lot of times you can even noticeably see it fading. So,
Yeah. Those black pants that you have in so many varying shades
yeah,
of
right.
black, depending on how long you've owned them or how often you've worn them and washed them.
Right,
I think
exactly.
that's a great example.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But yeah, yeah, it really depends on the natural dye. But there are quite a few really solidly proven dyes that have withstood the test of time. Weld is one of them. It dyes a yellow that is very pure and lasts a very long time. Cochineal, I love talking about cochineal. It's a tiny little insect that lives on prickly pear cactus, and
Oh,
you can get a pink and a red color. And I think it's cool that you can use even insects to dye, but that is a very, very light fast and wash fast dye as well.
mm.
So, and of course they do also need to be adhered properly to the yarn. So they're
There's
anytime
a
you're
lot to
dyeing.
learn.
Yeah, there is a lot to learn.
Yeah.
Sorry if I'm going off too far
Oh,
into
no, no, no.
nerd land.
As much as feel comfortable sharing, we're
Yeah,
always I think that's one of the things as makers, as crafters, we're always soaking up, bits of knowledge about different parts of, what we do and that lifelong learning thing. I think there's always,
for
something
sure.
new to learn in your craft, whatever it is, whether it's, knitting, crocheting, dyeing, spinning, weaving,
Mhm.
something you haven't tried before. Um, yeah,
Yeah, there's always more to learn.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you if you have a favorite yarn or knitting related tip or trick or a favorite notion, something that you love that makes your knitting life easier when you do have time to knit in between the dyeing.
Yeah. Um, so I was thinking about this, and maybe I'm gonna say I'm going for something kind of obvious, but maybe it isn't so obvious because um, I know that there is a fairly universal hatred of weaving in ends, right? I mean, it not everybody, and I personally don't mind. And there have been stages in my knitting journey where I didn't like weaving in yarn in ends, but um, I'm gonna tie this back to my love of non-superwash wool.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I love that with non-superwash, you can just spit slice those ends together And when you're, making a multi-skein project, or if you have to, clip an end and start again somewhere on another part of a project, I love that I don't need any tools. I can just spit splice my
So
yarn
tell us
right
what
in
that
my
is
hand.
for those. I know what it is, but explain it for those who don't know.
Yes, yes. So it's where you take the 2 ends of your yarn and you just add a little bit of moisture. So you could take, if you wanna be fancy, you can get some water from a water glass or something and
Fancy fancy
put it
water, right?
yeah, yeah. Um, and put it in your hand and oops, there we go, my hand, your hand,
Yeah.
and then the 2 ends, and you just rub it together, creating the friction, and once you have that friction there, it'll adhere the ends, the fibers together for you, so you don't have any ends left. So it'll look a little bit different because when you're creating that friction, it's gonna um,
Like felt?
change the yeah, it's gonna felt it and it's gonna change the spin, the twist, there we go, the twist of the yarn. So it'll look a little bit different, but but it's really nice that you can just do it right where you're at when you're knitting along and you're like, oh, I need to add a new skein of yarn in. You don't have to do anything. You just can, join them right together there. Um, and it's easy. The Russian join is also a really great one too. It's kind of where you take some of the plies apart and then you kind of braid them back together on the two ends, and that makes a really nice sturdy join as well. So I don't know.
Those are good tips. I love that. So, I usually also like to ask what you're excited about, but I think I know that you are and I am excited about our knit along, which we'll talk about it. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that's going on? And then we could talk about the knit along.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
our
Okay.
business. We're having
Yeah.
a
Well.
fun.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason we're doing a knit along even is because Henlia Handmade is celebrating its 4th anniversary. And so I've launched a new collection to kind of help celebrate that. And Jessica has been so kind as to collaborate with me on a pattern design for one of the colorways that I designed. And so, yeah, so we're making it a big party. I also designed a special limited edition colorway to help celebrate the anniversary as well. I'll only have it available for purchase for until September 1st, and then I'll just retire that one so it stays a special edition. I haven't had a big party like this since Henley Handmade's 1st anniversary. And I also had a limited edition yarn that year. So and that was really fun to do. So I thought it would be a good thing to bring it back, and it's not the same colorway, but it's the same idea, where it has just a special um, it's a special colorway just for this event. So
I love that.
yeah.
So I will share my screen, and I'm getting so much feedback. I wonder why. So I have it open somewhere.
I don't hear it on my end.
No? Okay. If you don't hear it, then hopefully no one else does, and it's just me. So we're having a knit along, and it is inspired by Mindy's 4th anniversary, and also the theme of sea glass. And Mindy sent such a beautiful email this morning talking about her inspiration for the theme and for the colors. And I designed a shawl. And I have some pictures of the shawl, and I have some pictures of the yarn colorways. So as Stitch Society members, I have a special code for you. I will share it with the link to the collection that I'll get from Mindy. And you'll have the ability, if you would like to purchase a kit of the yarn that Mindy designed, then you can use that code so that the pattern will be free for you. but you can still get the kit. And you have, I think you said you have 2 different options for the kits,
I do. I do. I have,
and those are the colors.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so I have a kit that is the yarn plus the pattern. And then I also have a bigger kit where it includes the pattern and the yarn as well as some other accessories. Um, just you mentioned that a short little knitting row counter would be handy for keeping track of the repeats or the repeats. Is that the right word?
Yeah,
Row,
the rows.
the row, yeah,
There's yeah, yeah.
yeah. And so I've kind of curated little short row counter, knitting chain row counter, which are fun. And if you haven't used one of those, I can provide instructions for those. And some stitch markers and another little extra little goodie in there for you as well. So there's the 2 different options for the kits.
Awesome. And so we're going to have, so these are the 4 colorways, and you mentioned there is also a 5th one that is more of a variegated
Mhm.
colorway, and that is the limited edition one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
So those will
I
be
didn't I didn't include that one up here because the pattern sort of lends itself more towards solids and semi-solids and light variegation than this limited edition colorway is more variegated than that. So I didn't want to include that in there as an option.
yeah.
Although you're always welcome. Always
Yeah.
welcome.
So if you want the limited, you could, I think I haven't actually seen it yet, but I think you could do a variegated colorway with this pattern too. I think it would be pretty too.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Um And then, so the pre-orders for the kits, and you can pick either one, whether you would you'll get the pattern from me. So whether you want just the yarn or you want the kit that has all the other goodies. So those are open for you guys today, and I'll share that link with you later. And then we're going to open it up to the public on Friday, and then we're going to have a cast on party on Zoom, and that's going to be Thursday, September 14th. So that's going to be at where we're managing 2 different coasts here. So 8 o'clock Eastern and 5 o'clock Pacific. And then we'll have 2 more knit nights following that. We are not 100% sure on the day and time on those because we're both moms of littles that are in school, and we're waiting for the teachers to tell us when back to school night is and all of those things. We want to make sure that we don't commit to hosting something on a day when when we might be needed to meet the teacher and all of those fun things. But we will update you with all of that. There is no cost to participate in the knit along. It's not something that we're charging extra for above the cost of the pattern or the yarn. And Mindy was so kind and generous, and she said, just come and hang out, even if you don't buy the kit. If you're knitting the pattern, come hang out with us. So you can, if you have yarn in your stash, you're welcome to use that too.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're really excited about that. And I think that was all the little slides that I had to share. And so what is the best place to find you online these days? I know you have a private community, you have your email list. Where can people find you? I have your oh, Debbie said, are the dates correct? So I have the wrong date. Um, I think I do. Yeah, so the pre-orders are open today just for our VIPs. So just for you guys in the Stitch Society and Mindy's VIP group. And then Friday we're gonna open it up to the public. And then Mindy needs time to dye the yarn and get the kits ready for you all. So that gives plenty of time with shipping delays and stuff to get the yarn in your hands for Thursday, September 14th for the cast on party. Okay. Yes, so I have your website, but where else can people find you?
I am on Instagram, although I haven't been as active recently. But my handle is Henlia Handmade on Instagram. And primarily I'm hanging out these days on YouTube. So my YouTube channel is also Henlia Handmade, and Pinterest, which is Henlia Handmade as well.
Awesome. And do you want to share a little bit about your VIP group?
Oh yeah, sure. I have a small but mighty little private community. It's called the Knit Mini Together community, and we we basically just spend some time hanging out each month. We have a knit night, and I send them special videos, and they get some other little perks, free shipping on an order each month. And they also always receive um, the first information and the first releases of everything. So, like my community did receive an email today about this new collection and our knit along, and so they'll kind of get first in line for that kind of stuff, because when there's, it's just me dyeing the yarn. So
Yeah.
sometimes it can take me a little while to get everything dyed up, but it's especially beneficial for things like sales when stock is limited, that kind of thing. So yeah, mainly right now we're just having a great time getting to know each other, and having fun knitting together. So
Awesome. I looked at the slide and I realized what Debbie and Chris were saying about the dates. And so I had September for all of them. So the pre-orders open today, Tuesday, August 22nd, and then they'll open to the public Friday, August 25th. And then the cast on party is in September, September 14th. So
oh,
that's
good catch. I didn't
yes,
catch that
good
either.
catch, friend. Thank you. You can proofread something till your eyes are glazing over, and so that was my mistake. But yes, so this week is the opening of the pre-orders, and then mid-September is when we're going to do the cast on party. Chris says that makes more sense. Yes. Sorry, friends. Yeah, so we're really excited to have Mindy back. We've done a couple projects before together, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you and to spend time with you. And yeah, I love blending our communities together, and we're gonna have fun together. The shawl is not a terribly complicated knit. I don't want to say tortured, but the first project we did together had crocheted baubles and a cable that was using 2 cable needles, the efflorescence cowl. So that was a reach of a project for some people, I think. And so this is it's an asymmetrical shawl. It starts by just casting on a few stitches, and you increase one on one side of the shawl every right side row, and it's just knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit, and yarn overs, and then some stockinette on the side. So that felt much more like, I don't know if it's just me, but my brain isn't ready for like complex projects right now. My brain needs something, kind of enjoyable, kind of a quick knit. What is great about it also is that it's meant for one skein. If you really want it bigger, it's a nice size. I have it here. But if you want it bigger, I hope this is okay. I'm saying this, Mindy. So
Oh
it
yeah.
goes all the way from there. Um, Reach out to Mindy if you want to make bigger. You can just continue knitting. So grab an extra skein of yarn, and you can make a nice, big, generously sized wrap. I'm hoping it's okay because we're pre-orders, so you'll know in advance how
Mhm.
many to dye. So if you think you want an extra to make a nice big, thing to wrap all the way around you, then reach out to Mindy, and she'll set you up with that.
Yeah, actually, we did mention that, and, I can modify the listings so that you
Oh,
can
okay.
have the choice of 1 or 2 skeins of yarn too, so I'm
Oh,
gonna
that'll make it
make
even
that
easier.
yeah, make that
Perfect.
easier. Yeah.
All right, so I'll grab that link later from Mindy, and I'll share that with you all for where, you can purchase that if you want the yarn for the kits, and I'll share the code that she created for you so that you can buy either the yarn or the yarn and the goodies without the pattern. And I'll just share Mindy's, website link one more time, and I am so grateful to you for joining me, friend. Thank you for being here. Thank you for it's so much more fun, I think, for both of us to have that collaboration, to work together, um, and to have, someone to bounce ideas off of. This pattern had a very different name before yesterday. um, and yes, and Chris says I'm looking forward to making it. And yeah, I'm excited, and I'll share all the information with you, and thank you so much for joining me, Mindy,
Yeah,
and thank you
thank
all for
you.
being here and hanging out with us and spending part of your day with us, and I'll talk to you all soon. So,
Mm, thank
thanks,
you.
friends. Bye,
Thanks for
and
having
I'm
me.
looking forward to this. Thank you. Oh, good. Alright, so let me, end this. Bye, friends.
Bye.